Welcome back to Black News Tonight. We continue to follow the battle brewing at the University of North Carolina, where Pulitzer Prize-winning MacArthur genius Nikole Hannah-Jones of the New York Times 1619 Project has just been denied a tenure position by the school's board, despite approval from faculty and the tenure committee. The news has led to an outpouring of support for Hannah-Jones, who joins a growing list of accomplished black scholars and black public figures attacked by the right. This is a fascinating moment. Just a few months ago, we saw letters written by right-wingers talking about cancel culture, how they couldn't take cancel culture, that we can't just cancel people because of their beliefs, that whenever people say things that are wrong or that are not politically correct or that make people uneasy, that the left just cancel them. And what many of us on the left said at the time was that that's simply untrue. That first of all, the issue here isn't canceling people, it's holding them accountable. And every time someone is held accountable, it doesn't mean that we're canceling them. But the other side of the equation was that many people on the right, the very people who are decrying cancel culture, are quick to shut something down when it doesn't cohere with their ideological positions. Whether it was in the 80s with the moral majority, where those people trying to stop rap music, whether those people trying to cancel the Teletubbies literally, whether it's people writing letters, whether it's people trying to get people fired from cable news networks and universities for their positions on the Middle East, whether it's talking about trying to get teachers fired, or whether it's talking about what we see here with Nikole Hannah-Jones. This is a stunning development, and many people were up in arms about it. One of those people was my next guest. His name is Jelani Cobb. He is a professor at Columbia Journalism School. He's also a staff writer at The New Yorker, and he was one of the first people to tweet and respond to what happened to Nikole Hannah-Jones. Jelani, good to see you, man.
Good to see
you. Help me understand this. Nikole Hannah-Jones is a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist, a MacArthur Genius Award winner, one of the most celebrated writers, certainly the last couple of years, certainly as a journalist. Let me say one more thing. She was recruited for a job, hired for a job, approved by the faculty, approved by the dean. How unusual is it that something like this would happen?
So the first is that this is extremely unusual. You and I have both been around academia long enough to understand how these commissions work, that if your department and your tenure committee is in favor of you being tenured, and the president, rather the dean and chair of your department are in favor, then it generally is a done deal. I've never in my academic experience seen or even heard of a case where the Board of Trustees then intervenes and effectively overrules the decisions that have been made at every other level of university governance. So one, but just to talk about the list of Nikole Hannah-Jones' qualifications, she has a MacArthur Award, she has a Pulitzer Prize, she has 2 Polk Awards, she has a Peabody Award, and she has 3 National Magazine Awards. That's one person. That would be an impressive haul if we were talking about an entire department. And so there's likely no one who came up for tenure with equal representation in terms of respect and awards within their professional field. And so what tenure basically depends on is where you stand in comparison to other people in your field. She is likely the most laureled, the most awarded journalist in her age category in her generation. And so it's absurd, and this is a blatant intrusion into academic freedom and an intrusion into freedom of the press.
So this is fascinating, because oftentimes when people do get denied tenure in academia, especially black folk, there's always this kind of nebulous thing where, we don't know if they were a good citizen or not, or we don't know if you have enough of this or enough of that, and there's always a kind of plausible deniability. But as you pointed out, she may be the most decorated job applicant in a journalism school we've seen in a very long time. So, but the university isn't pretending that it's about her qualifications. They're fairly explicit, or no one at the level of the Board of Trustees is pretending that this is about her lack of qualification, right?
No, not at all. If you watch the kind of right-wing media in response to it, they were very overt. They said, tenure denied to 1619 Project founder. And so this is a political reaction to the fact that she created the 1619 Project, and more fundamentally, an attack upon her for arguing, as the 1619 Project does, persuasively, about the centrality of race and racism in the development and establishment of the United States. That's not really a controversial position, except when we're talking about right-wing reactionaries who are also, when they're not attacking the 1619 Project, are minimizing and defending the people who were attempting to lynch the vice president on January 6th. And so it doesn't hold up to any sort of professional or scholarly or academic standard. So what we're left with is simple base politics.
You talked about how the 1619 Project points to the kind of centrality of race and racism in the formation of America. That's also a fundamental tenet of critical race theory. We've seen over the last few months the right go nuts about critical race theory too. We see legislation against critical race theory. I had a guest on here a couple of weeks ago who said that if he's elected governor of Georgia, he's going to ban critical race theory on his first day in office, even though he didn't know what it was. What's going on in the country right now that gets us to this place?
Well, I mean, it's the spirit of Trump, effectively. If you don't know what it is, it must be evil also, is the kind of place where ignorance operates in the position that knowledge usually is. It's like that old joke saying, I don't know what those words mean, but I must take it to mean you insulting me. And so critical race theory is decades old. The founding scholars in this field are near retirement, some of them. And so it's not, I mean, I guess it takes a while for people to catch on to ideas, but this is not some sort of novel academic development. It is a well-entrenched and well-established part of the intellectual and theoretical underpinnings of now at this point multiple fields. It started out in law schools, but has been applied to lots of different ideas as it relates to understanding how our society works. And so the other point of it is that the idea that racism is not central to the American society and American establishment is absurd. But it also is the logical extension of the kind of denial we see with kind of the efforts to refurbish the Confederacy, to talk euphemistically about the campaigns to maintain slavery in the United States and say it was about this constitutional abstraction called states' rights. And in order to absolve the United States of its racial sins, you then have to create this alternate fantasy version of the past, what W.E.B. Du Bois referred to as the propaganda of history. And so it has no bearing on what actually happened in the past. It's just a version of history that is politically useful for maintenance of white supremacy. And that's what we're seeing here.
Somebody's going to say, why are y'all making a big deal about this? They still made her an offer as a practice professor. They gave her a 5-year contract. I don't have a guaranteed job in my career. Why is this tenure thing a big deal? What do you say to those people?
Yeah, I understand that. I understand why people would think that and why people would raise that question. But here's why it's important. There are professors who are doing the work. When we say that we want the real history and we want to teach the truth, that requires scholarship, and that requires people going out and digging up things that people don't want to know, or things that people want to keep buried. And tenure is meant to protect the scholars who are doing this work. So if you want your children to learn the accurate story of the past, people are always asking me, do you teach the real Black history? Well, the people who produce the real Black history need the protections of tenure. And the effect of this may not be on Nikole Hannah-Jones. It may be on dozens or hundreds of younger scholars who don't have tenure, who will be going up for tenure, and who now are afraid that by doing their very important and diligent work, they will be liable to have their careers damaged in ways that may take years to recover from.
Before you go, let me ask you one more question. I was talking about this right before you came on. There's a way that the right has been so outraged about cancel culture. There's some irony here. I mean, it seems to me that this is evidence that perhaps they're the ones doing the canceling.
It's always been the case, though. That has always been the case. When we have seen the attempts to shout down people in public for pointing out the inconvenient truths of American history, that wasn't us. And what they are reacting to when they're talking about cancel culture is the mere emergence of people who can now, through social media, have a counter voice, can now argue back. But they've been doing this since time immemorial. Remember SpongeBob SquarePants when they went after him? There are all sorts of inanimate
Yes.
objects, ideas, uh, fictional characters that the right has a list of that they've gone after themselves. And so the idea of cancel culture, which is a term that I never use, but the idea of it existing and being solely in the province of people on the left is laughable.
Wow. William Jelani Cobb, thank you for joining me, and thank you for lending your insights on this.
Thank you.